If anything, Christine used to say I was too trusting, too calm, the kind of guy who assumed the best even when things didn't add up. For years, I wore that like a badge of honor. Thought it made me a good partner. Solid, dependable, not the kind to smother her with suspicion or dig through her texts in the middle of the night. But that night changed everything. It started with a simple habit, one I'd done for years without thinking. I was paying the bills, auto-pay on the mortgage, checking the card statements, nothing dramatic. I wasn't looking for anything. That's important to say because even now, part of me wants to believe this wasn't real. That if I just closed the tab, maybe I wouldn't have seen it. Maybe things would still feel normal. 2 transactions stood out. One from Bellows, that restaurant downtown with the white tablecloths and dim lights, where we'd spent our anniversary last year. The place with the truffle pasta she still dreams about. The kind of place we only go to for celebrations, not casual drinks. The other was from a beachside hotel nearly 2 hours away. Not a chain, one of those boutique places with private decks and ocean views. Christine had always said she wanted to go there together, someday. That night, she told me she was going to a no-men night with her girlfriends. Yoga, wine, a little catharsis. Something about group healing, or maybe it was full moon energy. She had a poetic way of describing things that I usually didn't question. I figured it was harmless. I even helped her find her yoga mat before she left. She wore those black leggings she always said were just for comfort. Tossed her hair into a bun, sprayed on some lavender mist. She looked relaxed, confident, like someone who had somewhere to be and no reason to lie. So why did those transactions feel like a punch to the gut? At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they did yoga after dinner. Maybe the hotel was for someone else. Maybe I was overthinking it, creating stories in my head like some paranoid sitcom husband. But the timeline didn't add up. The restaurant charge came in at 6:47 p.m. The hotel at 9:13 p.m. She didn't come home until just after midnight. I remember sitting on the couch, the glow of the laptop screen turning everything around me cold. The house was quiet, too quiet. I muted the TV without even realizing it. Suddenly, every tick of the clock on the wall started sounding like an accusation. I didn't want to assume the worst. I just couldn't explain what I was seeing. Around 12:15 a.m., I heard the key in the lock. She came in softly, like she was trying not to wake me. I stayed seated, watching her. She didn't see me at first. She was busy slipping off her heels, brushing something invisible off her dress. Not yoga pants. A dress. A navy blue one, short, with thin straps, the kind she used to wear when we were first dating. She hadn't worn it in years. Her hair wasn't tied up anymore. It was curled, styled, falling over her shoulder in a way that didn't match the story she had told me earlier. When she finally saw me, she smiled. A little startled, but not guilty, not yet. "Hey, babe, you're up?" she said, voice soft and almost apologetic. I nodded. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." She walked over, leaned down, kissed me on the forehead. Her skin was warm, too warm. Her perfume smelled different, not lavender. Something sharper, like champagne mixed with a musky sweetness I didn't recognize. And then I saw it. A faint red mark just below her ear, near her neck. It wasn't a rash or a mosquito bite. It was a smudge. The thumbprint maybe, not hers. It looked fresh. "Yoga run late?" I asked. She nodded casually. "Yeah, we stayed after for wine and a little journaling. Lost track of time." "Cool," I said, doing my best not to sound off. "How were the girls?" "The usual. Taylor brought that weird vegan chocolate, and Sarah kept talking about her ex. It was kind of a mess, honestly." I nodded again, slowly. She was good at this. Too good. "So, what's with the hotel charge?" I asked quietly, watching her face. She blinked. Just for a second. Not long, but long enough. Then came the spin. "Oh, that," she said, with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Taylor didn't want to drive home after drinking, and Sarah lives far. I just booked them a room real quick. Figured it was safer." "Why?" The way she asked why was sharp, like she was already preparing her defense. I shrugged. Just saw it come through. Thought maybe you got a room for yourself. Her smile faded slightly. Wow. Okay. So now you're checking my purchases? That's nice. I didn't respond. Do you think I'm lying? She asked, folding her arms. No, I said. But even I didn't believe that answer. There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable silence. She didn't fill it. Neither did I. Then came the twist. You know, Andrew, this is what I mean when I say you don't trust me, she said, tone turning icy. I go out for one night with my friends, and suddenly you're combing through the bank account like I'm under surveillance? I wanted to ask her why that restaurant, why that hotel, why the champagne on her skin, but she'd flipped the script before I could. Now I was the one being questioned, the one being painted as paranoid, controlling. You don't have to monitor me, Andrew, she continued. This isn't a prison. I told you where I was. I don't know what else you want from me. It was surreal, like watching a movie where the villain accuses the hero of being the problem. And the worst part? She was calm, steady. Her voice didn't crack. Her hands didn't shake. It was like she'd said these words before. Maybe not to me, but somewhere. Maybe to herself in the mirror. Maybe in her head on the drive home. She was prepared. That scared me more than anything else. I didn't say much after that. Just nodded, said I was tired, and went upstairs. She stayed behind, probably relieved the conversation had ended without a blow-up. But lying in bed that night, I felt something shift. It wasn't just about the receipt or the dress or the strange perfume. It was about how quickly she had turned the spotlight off herself and onto me. How easily she played the role of the misunderstood wife while planting doubt in my mind. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint creak of floorboards as she moved around downstairs. Maybe pouring herself a glass of water. Maybe texting someone. I didn't know anymore. That night, I realized something I never wanted to admit. In our marriage, lies had started to sound more natural than truth. And once that happens, once deception starts to feel like the default setting, it's not just about what happened that night. It's about everything before it. Everything after. The balance had shifted, and I had no idea how far it would go. After that night, I didn't bring it up again. I didn't ask about the hotel. I didn't question the champagne. I didn't mention the faint red mark I saw on her neck. But I didn't forget any of it either. What changed wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. There was no yelling, no ultimatums. Just a subtle rewiring of my attention. It was like someone had flipped a switch in my head, and suddenly, I was noticing everything I used to ignore. Christine and I had always lived in this rhythm. Familiar. Predictable. She had her routines, I had mine. But now those routines felt distorted, crooked in small ways. It started with her appearance. She began dressing differently. More effort, more polish. It wasn't just new clothes, it was the kind of clothes that made a statement. Low-back tops, short skirts, heels that clicked like confidence across the hardwood. Not the kind of outfits you throw on for brunch with friends or a co-working session. Then there was the makeup. Not more, just different. She used to do light eyeliner, lip balm, maybe a little concealer. But now there were smoky eyes, glossy lips, highlighter, and the perfume. God, the perfume. We'd always shared a shelf in the bathroom for toiletries. I knew every bottle she owned, where they came from, what they reminded me of. But these new scents? I didn't recognize them. They were heavier, more floral. Muskier. One smelled almost exactly like the hotel lobby from that receipt. I'd stood there once years ago, waiting while she checked us in for a weekend trip. The scent was identical. Still, I said nothing, because I wasn't trying to catch her in a lie. I was trying to prove to myself that I was wrong. But I wasn't. A few days later, on a Friday, Christine told me she was going to spend the day working from a new co-working space across town. She said she needed a change of scenery, that the team was too loud on Slack. I didn't question it. I even made her coffee before she left. She wore a beige blazer, black blouse, slim jeans, heels, and lipstick. It was more polished than her usual work-from-home look, the one that involved old sweatshirts and messy buns. When she left, I watched her walk down the front steps, heels clacking confidently against the pavement. She didn't look back once. That evening, she came home late. Not rush hour late. Late. Her excuse? Lost track of time, she said, setting her bag down. Got caught up finishing something with Taylor. We ended up grabbing dinner. I nodded. Didn't press. But something gnawed at me. Christine had an old smartwatch she didn't use anymore. She'd gotten a newer model 6 months back, and the old one ended up in a drawer. But when I was setting up a new app on my phone, I noticed something strange. That old watch was still connected to our shared health account. So I opened it. Steps, routes, heart rate. The data was still syncing. That day, Christine hadn't gone to a co-working space. She hadn't even been near the downtown tech district. The GPS trail showed a long stop at Riverview Towers, a luxury apartment building on the west side. Then a walk around the block. Then a return to the same building. She'd spent nearly 6 hours there. I recognized the address. Adam lived there. Her coworker. She'd mentioned him in passing before. Adam from the product team. Adam who always forgets deadlines. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time. But now I was seeing him differently. And I hated that. I closed the app and set the phone down. My hands were trembling, but not from shock. From clarity. I didn't confront her. Couldn't. Not yet. Because suddenly I understood. I'd stepped into a game that had already been going on for a while. And if I wanted to survive it, I needed to stop thinking like a husband and start thinking like someone who'd been written out of the story without realizing it. The next piece of the picture came days later. I was organizing my things in the closet. Something mundane, trying to distract myself. When I found a small bag tucked behind a stack of sweaters. It was from a boutique jewelry shop uptown. One Christine used to walk by and point at, saying it was way too expensive. Inside was a slim black box. A bracelet. Simple, gold, elegant. Not engraved. Not tagged. But it wasn't hers. I would have noticed if she'd worn it. There was a receipt in the bag. Dated a week before. Paid in full. Christine's name. Later that night, I brought it up casually. Hey, did you get someone a gift recently? She blinked. Saw the jewelry bag in the closet. Boutique stuff. She paused. Too long. Then smiled. Oh yeah, it's for Taylor. Her birthday's coming up. Isn't her birthday in February? I asked. Another pause. She's having a rough time. Thought it would be nice to surprise her early. I nodded, forcing a smile. I didn't mention that Taylor had posted birthday photos 6 months ago, or that Christine hadn't even gone to the dinner. By this point, I had stopped believing any of it. But the hardest part wasn't the lies. It was how easily they came. How they rolled off her tongue like she'd practiced them in the mirror. Eyes wide with innocence, voice soft with just the right note of exasperation. As if I was the one reaching. I was the one clinging to shadows. Everything she said began to sound. Written. Scripted. And what hit me hardest wasn't the betrayal. It was the effort. She was working harder to protect the lie than she ever worked to protect us. That realization gutted me. Because for years, I'd thought we were building something. Through fights, through moves, through tight months and sick parents and missed anniversaries. I thought we were building a life together. But now I understood. Christine wasn't erasing our life in one big, dramatic gesture. She was doing it piece by piece. Changing her perfume. Flipping her phone face down. Closing the bathroom door during calls. Laughing more with strangers than she did with me. Sleeping on the edge of the bed. Touching me less. These weren't accidents. They were decisions. And somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being a part of her plans. That night, I lay in bed with her beside me, scrolling on her phone, screen dimmed low. I stared at the ceiling, heart thudding. She turned, smiled, and kissed my shoulder. And for the first time in years, I felt nothing. No spark, no connection, no warmth, just distance. Not the kind that could be fixed with a date night or a vacation. The kind that grows in silence. The kind that's planned. By the time Christine announced her weekend getaway, I had already stopped believing in coincidences. It was a Thursday night. She was cutting vegetables, barefoot in the kitchen, sipping white wine like everything was fine. I was at the table, pretending to scroll through emails. That had become our dynamic lately. She played the role of a functioning wife, and I played the role of someone still convinced we were okay. She mentioned it casually, like she was talking about groceries. The girls and I are going out of town this weekend. No men. No phones. Just a female reset. I looked up. Where to? Some lake house. Taylor booked it. I don't even remember the name. She shrugged. We just needed space. The group's been going through a lot. Space. That word had been showing up a lot lately. I nodded and said nothing. But in my mind, alarms were going off. She didn't ask if I'd be okay alone. Didn't offer details. Just assumed I'd accept it and move on. I didn't argue. I didn't even raise an eyebrow. Because I knew better now. The second I asked questions, I'd become the problem again. The possessive husband. The suspicious anchor weighing her down. That was her favorite angle lately. Whenever I pointed out inconsistencies, she'd accuse me of choking her freedom. So I smiled. Said it sounded fun. Wished her a good time. The next morning, she left early. Duffel bag in the trunk, yoga mat in the back seat, hair up in a bun. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, barely touching skin, and then she was gone. I waited until the garage door had fully closed before letting the mask drop. I didn't need to follow her. I already had what I needed. Christine had a habit of leaving her location services on for Instagram stories. She never thought much about it, especially when she wasn't the one posting. But her coworkers? They tagged everything: brunches, rooftops, random sunsets. I waited. Around 6 p.m. I was on the couch scrolling when a notification popped up. Christine's coworker, Leah, had posted a story. Just a 10-second clip. A bonfire in the woods, glasses of wine, laughter off camera. You couldn't see much, just firelight and shadows. But in the lower corner of the frame, barely lit, I saw it. A woman curled into the side of a man, wrapped in a blanket. Her bare shoulder, exposed just enough, was unmistakable. I'd seen that curve every day for 10 years. Her posture was familiar too, the way she sat when she felt safe. Leaning slightly inward, toes tucked, head tilted just enough to show trust. It was her. And it wasn't just the way she sat. It was the man's hand resting behind her. Subtle, possessive, like it had been there for a while. I froze the video and took a screenshot. Zoomed in. The blanket was the same one from our linen closet. The one we used for movie nights. The house was tagged in the story, Black Pines Retreat, just 2 hours north. A rental property. I don't know what I expected to feel. Rage, heartbreak, denial. But all I felt was this eerie clarity. The fog was gone. The guessing, the theories, the doubts, all erased in 10 seconds of blurry video. She was with him. She had taken pieces of our life. Our blanket, our weekend plans, our silence, and repurposed them into a new life with someone else. I didn't think. I just acted. I got in the car and drove. No music. No calls. Just the sound of tires on asphalt and the rhythmic churn of the engine. As I got closer to the forest, cell signals started fading. The roads narrowed. The houses thinned out. By the time I found the cabin, it was dark. The sky was full of stars. The air smelled like pine and wet dirt. I parked a little down the road, behind a patch of trees, and walked the rest of the way. The house was warm with light. I could hear laughter again. Not loud, just enough to sting. I stayed behind the tree line, far enough not to be seen, close enough to see everything. There they were. Christine in our blanket. Adam. It had to be him, beside her, pouring wine into her glass like he'd done it before. His hand rested against her thigh. She didn't move it. She leaned into him like she'd done it 1,000 times. Then, in that flickering light, she turned toward him and kissed him. Not a rushed, guilty kiss. A slow one. Familiar. I stood there frozen. My breath caught somewhere between pain and relief. She wasn't hiding anymore. This wasn't an affair she regretted. This was a second life she had created. The kiss ended. She smiled at him, and I turned around. Branches snapped beneath my feet as I walked back toward the road. Behind me, I heard voices, hers rising sharply, calling my name. Then footsteps. She came running out, barefoot, still wrapped in the blanket, clutching it like it was some kind of shield. "Andrew," she yelled. "Wait." I kept walking. She caught up to the car just as I reached it. Her palm slapped the passenger window. "Please, just talk to me. It's not what you think." I looked at her, not at the blanket, not at the tears starting to form, not at the way she stood there half exposed in the cold. Just her. The woman I had trusted. The woman who had rewritten our story without telling me. I didn't unlock the door. I didn't say a word. I just started the car. The engine roared to life, and she flinched like it had slapped her. She pounded the window once, twice. "Andrew, please, let me explain." The car moved. She ran alongside for a few steps, then stopped. Her voice cracked in the trees. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard the sound of branches breaking under her feet. A snap, then silence. No more excuses. No more practiced lines. Just cold. And truth. And for the first time in months, I wasn't confused. I knew exactly what had happened. And more importantly, I knew what I was going to do next. After that night in the woods, everything in our house looked the same. But none of it felt the same. Christine returned the next day like nothing had happened. She let herself in through the back door, quietly, like a burglar in her own life. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the familiar sound of keys clinking against the countertop. She stepped inside barefoot, still wrapped in that oversized cardigan she always wore when she was trying to look disheveled and innocent. Her hair was tied back in a loose braid. No makeup, just her. Stripped down but not sorry. She didn't say a word at first. She just stood there in the doorway, eyes scanning the room like she wasn't sure she was welcome anymore. I didn't speak either. I poured my coffee, took a slow sip, then reached for the other mug, hers. Poured that too. Placed it gently on the counter. That was my way of saying, we're going to pretend now. That's what we're doing. She sat down at the table, hands wrapped around the mug like she needed the warmth. "I don't even know where to start," she said finally. I didn't respond. She looked up at me. "You didn't answer your phone." "I know." I tried to explain. "I saw enough," I said flatly. Her mouth opened, closed. She looked down at her coffee like it could give her the right words. "Nothing happened before that night," she said, eyes still lowered. "I swear, Andrew." I didn't answer, because I wasn't there to validate her version of events. Not anymore. The rest of the day passed in a haze of artificial normalcy. She cooked dinner like she always did, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, glass of wine placed carefully by my plate. She tried to make small talk. I gave short answers. She asked about work. I asked if the vegetables were organic. That was how we lived for the next several days, in silence dressed up as routine. No screaming matches, no tearful confessions, just quiet performances. She was playing the role of the remorseful wife, and I was playing the role of the man who hadn't already made up his mind. But behind that performance, I was preparing. I didn't tell her that I had already started pulling records, bank statements, cloud backups, photo archives. I didn't tell her I was going through our shared accounts and downloading everything with a timestamp, or that I was reading through the metadata of every photo saved to the cloud. Every date, every location, every frame that told the story she never said out loud. One afternoon, while she was taking a shower, I opened her old laptop, the one she stopped using but never wiped clean. The hard drive still had synced folders. Inside, I found dozens of images she'd never posted, never printed, never even mentioned. Photos of hotel rooms, champagne glasses, candlelight. One showed her reflection in a mirror, wearing one of my shirts. Only it wasn't in our house. The bed sheets were different. The mirror was rimmed in brass. The lighting soft yellow, almost amber, not ours. And in the background, barely visible, was a bottle of cologne I'd never owned. She took the photo herself, framed it like a memory, saved it like a secret. Later that week, I synced data from the smart lock app she thought I never used. Each unlock was time-stamped. She'd been leaving the house at times she never mentioned, coming home at odd hours, sometimes unlocking the door twice in one night, once at 7 p.m., again at 2:43 a.m. Pattern formed. A second life. I printed everything, every screenshot asterisk T, every timestamp, every photo. I labeled them, built a timeline. It wasn't rage that guided me. It was clarity. I realized I didn't need to confront her. She had already confessed. Not with words, but with behavior. With every choice she thought I wouldn't notice. The affair wasn't a single event. It was a gradual abandonment. A slow erasure of us. Her touches had stopped meaning anything long before she touched someone else. Her laughter stopped sounding familiar long before she shared it with another man. This wasn't just cheating. It was repurposing. She had taken the life we built and handed it piece by piece to someone else. And now I was preparing to take it back. That weekend, she told me she was going to her parents' house for space. I nodded and said, "Sounds good." She packed lightly, like she expected to return. I watched her drive away, then locked the door behind her and got to work. I transferred our savings into a private account. Just my half. Nothing more. I wasn't petty, I was precise. I rented a studio apartment under a temporary lease. Just enough space to breathe. Then I went to a lawyer. I told her everything. Showed her the folder. Let her flip through the receipts and photos in silence. She looked up at me and said, "You've done half the work already. She won't know what hit her." I didn't smile, because this wasn't revenge. It was cleanup. A week later, I came home from work to find Christine already back. She was in the living room folding laundry. She looked up, gave a soft smile, like none of it had ever happened. "How was your day?" she asked. "Productive," I said. "Mine too," she said. "I've been thinking. We should talk. Really talk. I think I lost track of things. But I'm here now. I'm willing to fix this." Fix this. She said it like she'd spilled wine on the rug. Like we could scrub it out and light a candle. I looked at her and said nothing. She walked toward me, touched my arm. "Andrew, please." I looked down at her hand. Familiar, but not safe anymore. "I need you to know I'm trying," she said. I met her gaze and replied, "I know," but I stopped. The words hit her harder than yelling ever could. She stood still, trying to read my face, trying to figure out if there was still a version of me who might forgive her. But that version didn't live here anymore. That version left the night I saw her kiss him in firelight. Since then, I'd been quiet, not because I was lost, but because I was preparing. And the silence wasn't weakness. It was the sound of something being built behind the curtain. A new chapter. One without her. I didn't have to say a word. Not to her. Not to anyone. By then, I had realized something important. If someone builds their life on lies, you don't have to burn it down. All you have to do is stop holding it up. Christine's fall didn't start with me. It started with someone else. A mistake not even she could control. It happened a few weeks after that night in the woods. We were still living together, if you could call it that. Same roof, separate worlds. She had started acting overly composed. Not kind, not warm, just polished. Like she was trying to balance everything with a calm smile and perfect posture. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't apologize again. She just acted like the whole thing had been absorbed into some unspoken agreement. We didn't talk about Adam. We didn't talk about the weekend trip. She tried to fill the silence with normalcy. But I could see it wearing on her, the pressure of pretending. Then one afternoon it started. I was on a call in the office when her voice rose from the kitchen. Muffled but sharp. I muted myself and stepped out. She was holding her phone, pacing. "I already logged those hours," she snapped. "That's how we always report cross-team time. Adam said it was fine." Another pause. Then quieter. "Well, no, I wasn't on site. But the work got done, didn't it?" My stomach dropped. She turned her back to me, whispering into the phone now. "Can we talk about this offline?" I walked away before she noticed me. Later that night, she mentioned it casually, again like it was nothing. "There's some internal audit happening at work," she said, pouring wine. "They're making a big deal out of timesheet discrepancies." I nodded. "You worried?" She scoffed. "Of course not. It's bureaucracy. Just someone looking for a reason to shuffle blame." But I saw it. The slight tremble when she set the glass down. The way her eyes didn't quite meet mine. That week, she started coming home tense. Staying up late with her laptop open but barely typing. One night I walked past and saw her staring at the screen, hands pressed to her face. She didn't hear me, didn't know I saw. The next morning, she got the call. I was in the living room when she picked up. At first, she was calm, responding with tight, professional tones. But then I heard it, the crack. "I understand," she said. "But I wasn't the only one who. No, Adam was leading that project. I was following his direction." Silence. Then her voice a little smaller. "But wait, why him? He was." Another pause. Then a whisper. "He's fired." The rest I couldn't hear. She ended the call and stood in the kitchen, motionless. Her hand still holding the phone like it hadn't registered yet. Adam was gone. Her safety net, her secret, her partner in crime, cut loose. She came into the living room and stood in the doorway, waiting for me to ask. I didn't. That night, she barely touched her food. She stared at her plate, pushing broccoli around like a child trying to avoid vegetables. Eventually, she spoke. "They're putting me on unpaid leave. It's temporary, just until they finish the investigation." I nodded. "Makes sense." Her eyes flicked up. "You think I deserve it?" I took a sip of water. "You think you don't?" She looked away. She didn't try to explain after that. She just sank further into herself. Over the next few days, the house changed. She stopped wearing makeup, stopped putting on real clothes, started spending long hours lying on the couch, scrolling silently, expression unreadable. She stopped going out. Friends stopped calling. I watched her world shrink. And still I said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. She had gambled everything on Adam, on a secret relationship built on convenience, thrill, and entitlement. And now, with him gone, she was flailing. She tried to text him. I knew she did. I saw his name flash on her screen one night, followed by, "You should have told me. I'm getting all the blame. Please just say something." He didn't respond. 2 days later, she threw her phone at the wall. It didn't break, just bounced off and landed face down. I walked over, picked it up, and placed it gently back on the coffee table. She didn't thank me. She didn't speak. She just curled up on the couch and stared at the ceiling. That weekend, she tried a new tactic. She printed a letter, left it on the dining table. A note to her company, some half-hearted attempt to explain the timesheet fraud as a misunderstanding. She used phrases like emotional strain, confusion during remote work, and poor communication between cross-functional teams. It was full of soft blame, passive framing. Nothing was her fault. I didn't read the whole thing. I just folded it in half and slid it back into her stack of unopened mail. Let the paper speak for itself. Because the truth was, she wasn't being investigated because she cheated. She was being investigated because she got sloppy. She thought her personal life existed in a separate orbit from her career, but it never really does. Not when you blur boundaries, log fake hours, let personal affairs interfere with work performance. Adam was the kind of guy who made messes and walked away clean. Christine was left sweeping up the pieces, and for once, she couldn't twist the story in her favor. She tried blaming HR, tried blaming her manager. Eventually, she tried blaming me. "You haven't said anything," she said one night, her voice brittle. "You just sit there and watch." "I don't need to say anything," I replied. Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is what I deserve?" "No," I said calmly. "I think this is what you caused." She didn't respond, because she knew it was true. The storm wasn't mine. It was hers, and I was just the witness. The one person who no longer needed answers, because I had them all. Now I was just waiting for the last piece to fall. Christine unraveled fast. Her friends stopped answering. Her parents offered polite distance. She wandered the apartment like a ghost, scrolling through old photos she once staged to look happy. Her letter to HR went ignored. I moved my money, signed the lease, drafted the papers. She cried some nights, begged others. I just documented. Quiet, steady. She hadn't hit bottom yet, but she was falling. Fast. After the divorce, I left quietly. No fights, no closure speeches. I moved to the coast, bought an old boat, lived in silence. There were no more lies to untangle, no more glances to decode. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't need to. Her world collapsed on its own. Mine just changed shape. And in that calm, with only wind and waves around me, I understood something simple. Sometimes, peace is walking away without saying a word.